What's the creepiest display of intelligence you've seen by another human? A friend once showed me his guidebook to how to handle his girlfriend. He'd taken notes on her likes and dislikes, what he'd given her and precisely how she responded, which actions caused which responses in her, what phrases he could quote at her to yield particular responses, etc. And then sort of used the information he'd collected to write a little guide to expected outcomes of various things he does, so that he could diffuse her if she got mad at him. If she felt unloved, he had strategies for fixing the situation so he could go back to doing whatever he likes while she gets off his back. If X, then Y will likely do Z. Unless P. It was somewhere between oddly sweet and creepily manipulative. Not really creepy, just disturbing. My biological grandfather was either a psychopath or sociopath. He was a very intelligent, manipulative, charming, very successful and wealthy man. He did some unthinkable things my family and I don't talk about. When I was 2 years old he tried to bribe my dad and buy me since my mother cut contact with him many years before. Yes, you read that correctly, he tried to buy me. How much did he offer? Just so we can get an idea of the sort of psychopath. I don't remember the exact amount, but if my memory is correct he offered somewhere around $300,000 with a monthly payment of a few thousand. I'd have to ask my parents though. I used to know someone who would be pretty quiet around people he didn't know, only give info when asked and half of it. I took it as guarded until I got really close to him. What piqued my interest was when he said, "I don't like her. She's scary smart, but plays dumb." I dislike scary smart people like that. It's because he used to be manipulative when he was younger, and admitted it while saying, "I'm not like that anymore." I noticed he was always watching and reading people. He'd know who you can tell things to, and who you can't. He knows who has dated who, and would read people's mannerisms. He would say things like he had trauma as a kid, "That's why I was nice to him." He fake laughs after saying something, even if it's repeating what you say. It's as if he is trying to start laughter because he doesn't know how to make people genuinely laugh, but wants them to and doesn't know how to do that other than being funny or charismatic, and even unnecessary compliments like a personal hype guy. Common approval-seeking traits for children who had bad family lives. That's why he talked to you about foster care, because he was probably in the system and yeah. That dude was in the system. Called out so quickly. Your stepmom probably wants to run the family instead of your dad because your dad works and she doesn't, and he doesn't want to constantly rein in the kids and grandkids. She wants some semblance of control because she doesn't work. She's a busybody with nothing to do but watch the news and send emails and texts all day. That's why she's judgmental, because she knows it's false control but it's all she has. That was the best way to put my stepmom, a person he never met. Because she's annoying as fuck, and he only knew such a small amount of details about her because of what I had said to him. And he says this shit like it's common knowledge, while drinking, as if it's all monotonous to him. Scares me to think about how he used to be manipulative. Edit, well, this blew up. I'll reply but it'll take a while. Apropos, I guess. Edit 2, many people have speculated about trauma or autism. I will say a lot of people qualify to be somewhere on the spectrum, but he admitted he spent a very long period of his life trauma bonded to his ex Julie. He also lost his mom in his early life, and his ex-wife was abusive and manipulative. All of these things are second-hand info. I knew a guy who could remember everything he ever read, but that's not the creepy part. Creepy part was how he wouldn't tell you. So he didn't like telling people because it becomes a game for people. What is the fifth word of the second paragraph on page 93 for this book? So anyway, anyone knew, he just wouldn't tell them. Fair, up until they pissed him off. Then it was like a court drama. On January 16, 2007 you said that John and Jane were seen flirting at the coffee shop and, quote, "Oh my god, John is cheating on Mary with Jane again." Look through past messages and sure as shit the message would say that. Anyway, dude was super smart but really jaded and depressed. Fell out of touch so I don't know what he's doing now. A lot of people with very good memory get depressed. There is a good reason why we forget things. He was always really nice to everyone but yeah it would suck to remember everything like that. He doesn't have social media so I can't look him up but I hope he's doing well. Shortly before my ex-wife and I separated she stated that she had ran all of my friends and family away from me intentionally over the years. Not because she hated them but because if the day came where she decided to kill me, she would have time to dispose of my body and leave the country before, or if they noticed I was missing. By that point I hadn't talked to any of my friends or family for almost a year and a half, so they wouldn't have known for a good while thinking I was still just ignoring them because of her. What? That's creepy as fuck, Hopefully you're very far away from her and have reconnected with everyone. And told them what she said. You know, in case you go missing. We've been divorced for 3 years. I have full custody of our 3 girls and she's currently in a mental health facility. I didn't know it in the dating stages, but she had a mental illness and was diagnosed professionally with schizophrenia about 2 years before our divorce. I don't blame her for all of her actions or anything. I knew she was a sweet, kind-hearted person when we met, but her mental health declined rapidly after having each kid. The postpartum depression really ramped it up and it just became too much for her. We did divorce and I did get full custody of our daughters. As a criminologist, there's a lot of psychopaths who we research. A lot of them are highly intelligent, and have a very acute ability to read people. There was one case with a serial rapist in New York where he described how he was able to determine someone's likelihood of reporting him just by talking to them for a few minutes. He was able to determine if someone was insecure, socially awkward, self-conscious, etc., aka, less likely to report rape, through looking at their facial movements, tone of voice, certain word choices, their clothes, their makeup, their accent. Every single thing these women did, he analyzed thoroughly. He was able to understand so much about a person's personality and psyche within minutes of talking to them. Of course, he didn't innately know this stuff. He had been doing research on this, with the exact goal of raping women. I met this guy a couple of years back. It was our first date, we walked a little, we sat down at a fancy restaurant, and we got talking. At some point after a couple of drinks, he started analyzing me. He said that I wore this shoe because I thought it would complement my shirt, that I wanted to meet at that spot because I wanted to show him that I had a nice car, that I stepped back a bit when we were walking to check out his posture, that I evaluated if he was a boyfriend material with certain questions, that I picked this table because it was a corner and I was probably a little reserved and defensive, that I wished he was a little taller and I liked taller guys, etc., etc. Most of his analysis were correct. I felt naked. He was a psychiatrist. It was like a superpower, and he was using it. I didn't go out on second date with him, but I still remember him. It was a little creepy, a little fascinating. I hang around some shady people. The one that took it for me was a hardcore addict with multiple chemical compounds around his house he had no business having. He said he made them all himself. I know my chemistry, and they were all legit what they were labeled as he described how he made them, and it checked out. I've come to a point in my life where my philosophy is never to underestimate a drug addict. I've seen people at the bottom who are more intelligent in 1 or 2 things than I'd anticipate 90% of the global population. Visited a friend with a drug problem once. Another guy was there. Dude was some super high IQ genius. Dude excitedly told me about all kinds of chemistry facts and showed me pics of drugs he had made himself at some Walter White level purity. He had been to jail for them and still worked an IT job making like $40K a month, by his own words. The drug chemistry was more like a hobby to him. It was actually kinda interesting despite 95% of it going way above my head. He was super nice too, just actively ruining his life because he found drugs so interesting. It's freaking wild, isn't it? Yup. He was so naive too, said since he made the drugs as a hobby and didn't really need money due to his job, he gave them away randomly. Well, word got around, and druggies raided his apartment and robbed him at gunpoint. He just casually talked about having had to move like 3 times because of them tracking him down for his product. Said he was probably gonna move to the middle of nowhere next so he could work remote and cook in peace. Crazy. When I was 16, my stepdad figured out that my mom was cheating on him and secretly bugged the home phones, 1992, all landlines, and would record the calls and listen back in the garage. I spent hours of time on early bulletin board system sites, pre-dial-up internet, which would just create hours of feedback on his recordings or on the phone talking to my friends, boyfriends, etc. So he had to sift through epic amounts of my teen bullshit to get to the snippets of my mom's cheating. He also put a tracker on her car so he could follow her from a distance and figure out exactly where she was going. As long as he wasn't more than a couple miles away. It was impressive for the time. He told me later that I needed to find a job so I didn't just talk about sex on the phone all day. He wasn't totally wrong. I knew a girl who went to therapy and had therapists sit in for their hours and then take over the sessions. This girl had 3 separate therapists believing she had a different diagnosis. The first one diagnosed her with DID, dissociative identity disorder. The second diagnosed her with psychopathy and the third diagnosed her with BPD/bipolar 2. She was none of those things. She's a genius, one of the highest IQs ever tested, and was very bored. So she read about each condition and see if she could manipulate the therapists into believing her game. The main therapist stopped seeing her after the third bad diagnosis. She was truly just a bored young adult with autism spectrum disorders. She graduated high school at 14. Graduated college by 18. Now becoming a veterinarian. She also speaks 4 languages and writes/draws her own comics. I ran a pub crawl in Eastern Europe. Managing it. There was a guy who we hired who had been living rough. Dude was covered in tattoos, split tongue, he'd tattoos on his face, one of a fly. He loved drugs but I never knew just how hard. Definitely methadone. Anyway, this guy very quickly became the guy you ran to if you needed something fixed in a bar. He knew every single staff member in every single place we went to and they all loved him. We were supposed to get a free drink in each place as the pub crawl guides, but before long this guy had each bar giving us free bottles. He manipulated everyone around him. It was a nightmare trying to manage him. I could see what was happening. He'd essentially make himself essential and weaken the business apparatus as a whole, strengthening his own position. It was like watching a master puppeteer at work. I really learned a lot from that guy. I watched my mother validate my little sister for 2 weeks before using that closeness to try and tell her blatant lies about our father and older sister. Just manipulation for no goal other than insecurity and resentment. My mother is like a half-baked sociopath. Calculative but not exactly good at social math. BPD? Yeah, OCD, PTSD and anemia too. She's a sad character. Had a dude in high school who was really intelligent. Could do advanced math easily, and didn't really need to study anything to be able to do it just as well as me. He was also very manipulative, was involved in a lot of drama, and weird sexual things with other classmates. His father was just as bad, and I think he had daddy issues to be honest. He was the closest thing I've seen to a psychopath. Last I heard, he got a nickname, Virgin Slayer, and he's an 25-year-old dude, so that creeps me the fuck out. I'm not saying it was creepy, but my late friend Bruce could just learn anything on a whim. Languages, history, technology, you name it. He had been running science fiction conventions for 21 years, and when he stopped he said, "I am going to become a Cisco certified internet work expert. I heard they make a lot of money." Now, the CCIE certification is fucking hard. Normally it takes many years, thousands of dollars in courses, step programs, test exams, and then usually you have to fly out somewhere to take the exam. He just got some used books, and got a Cisco certified network associate, then a network professional, then a systems instructor within about 6 to 8 months. Out of knowing nothing about Cisco or modern computer networking, just ended up becoming an Cisco certified instructor in less than a year. Then went to get a CCIE. I believe, like most people, he failed the first time, but passed a second time. From 0 to CCIE in 18 months. Companies paid top dollar for him. Some paid just to have him on their letterhead. His entire life was like that. I worked at a psych hospital about 10 years ago. I floated, so I worked on all the units wherever they were short-staffed. For a couple days one week I was pulled to the adolescent unit. There was a 12-year-old boy, let's call him Joe. He was brought in from another residential center. At this other residential center, Joe was a ringleader of boys aged about 10 to 13 who would rape and assault girls who were also at the center. Joe knew the schedule of the staff and their rotation. He knew the diligent staff members and the not so diligent ones, so he would plan their attacks. He was the only patient that truly frightened me due to his intelligence and clear lack of remorse/getting off on others' people's pain. When I observed him, he would do little things such as make a certain noise that he knew would set off another child there. He was good at making friends with the other children and charming them. At one point they did a search of his room and found a bunch of the staff's schedules in there. I'm waiting to hear a story of him being a serial rapist/murderer now that he's in his 20s. Intelligence gone horribly wrong. And he was 12. My aunt was a psych nurse for almost 30 years. Towards the end of her career she had moved and took a position at an adolescent hospital near an army base. She said the only patient that actually scared her was a 9-year-old girl. She had apparently been moved around to multiple hospitals because her family kept moving. She didn't talk much, but when my aunt would talk to her, she would always mention that she couldn't wait to get home and see Woody, and that she was mad that she left him dirty. Finally, after a couple weeks, my aunt finally asked her who Woody was. Apparently, Woody was her wooden bat that she kept in the woods behind her house that she used to kill neighborhood pets with. Before this trip to the hospital she killed one of the neighborhood dogs and forgot to clean the blood off the bat. This was 10 years ago. My aunt still talks about that little girl. It's when a kind of hyper-observant guy kind of read me like he knew me years and years. Kind of creepy for me since I really don't like strangers knowing me since I like being private. I was at this casual get-together, chatting with random people, when this guy I'd never met before walked up and said, "You're a musician, aren't you?" I was caught off guard but said I play the guitar. That's when it got weird. He smiled and said, "I figured. Your fingers are calloused in a way that only happens with string instruments, and it's been a long time since you've stopped because they've toughened evenly. And your posture? It gives away how much time you spend hunched over it." I just kind of stood there, stunned. I hadn't even been holding my hands in a way that would make the calluses obvious. The worst part? He said it so casually, like it was no big deal to read someone like a book. I made an excuse to leave the conversation, but for the rest of the night, I couldn't shake the feeling that he'd noticed way more about me than he let on. I still wonder how much he saw that he didn't say. Creepy. My nephews and I were playing in the basement. Two of them fight over a toy and I separate them. Minutes later, the 4-year-old casually leans against the wall by the light switch, turn off the lights and runs at his 7-year-old brother. He punches him in the face and runs back to turn the light on, pretending like he didn't just assault his brother. I chew him out saying, "You punched your brother." He replies, "It was dark, you didn't see me do it." Premeditated assault at 4 years old. I'm a bit nervous about how clever and charming he can be. So I have been told that this is worrying and I should not bring it up in conversation. I drive a garbage truck in the town that I live in. I have been doing it for about 5 years. My route is loaded on a tablet where I have customers' names and addresses. It's an average route, so in a given week I am driving past almost 5,000 houses. My brain gets bored as I'm doing my job. Doesn't matter how many podcasts or audiobooks I listen to during my shifts. So I look at the names. Some are dull like a Jones or a Smith, and some aren't. Over time, some of them stick in my head, and I remember what their names are. Couple that with what cars are in the driveway, and I start noticing them around town. Now, here's the part my wife tells me I'm supposed to stop doing because it's creepy. My kids are older, and I will take them to their extracurriculars. While I'm there, I chat with everyone. I used to be in sales, so conversations are how I pass the time. Usually, at the beginning of the conversation, I hear their name, and I would casually mention which car in the lot was theirs. I am also a car guy, so I like it when people recognize my car. If I didn't know the car, I would ask them if they lived in a certain neighborhood. Not exact streets or house numbers because I knew that would be odd, but just neighborhoods. Long story short, people talk to my wife, and I keep to myself or don't go anymore. My 6-year-old daughter sometimes does or says something out of nowhere that just shocks us. She has this cute little voice, she is super cute and giggly, and will act like she can't do anything for herself. Now I wonder if she does it on purpose. Examples include, reading a difficult sentence my son was trying to sound out just by glancing at it and then denies ever doing it. When she was 4 she knew exactly how many people would fit into each car for a family reunion trip to a restaurant within seconds while the adults were stressing over who goes to which car. She was right. I'm from Italy and I speak Italian to my mom and Nonna all the time on the phone, but I speak English to my kids and I thought they didn't know Italian. My son can't understand it very well, but apparently she can. I know this because my mom was telling me about getting my kids bikes for Christmas and my daughter gasped and looked excited for a second, but then when she realized that she reacted she denied ever doing it or knowing about the bikes. My mom and I were speaking in Italian so the kids wouldn't have their surprise spoiled. Oh well. Her basic math skills are better than mine. She can do a lot of it in her head even if she still can't explain how she got the answers. Granted I have dyscalculia, but still. That makes me wonder if maybe she denied those things because she somehow thought she was in trouble for them? It's a possibility. I'd feel terrible if she thinks she's in trouble for it. I think she knows that if she just pretends to not know stuff she thinks will keep doing stuff for her. A friend of mine had been involved with a guy she worked with who turned out to be married with a young child. The friend was particularly vulnerable as she'd just gotten out of a horrifically abusive marriage and had zero concept of what having appropriate boundaries looked like. Guy started to jerk her around and string her along while subtly eroding the bit of little self-worth she'd scraped up since her divorce. Then he started milking her financially. Obviously he didn't leave his wife when he did all this. Enter uni friend. She told our friend exactly what to say and how to react when he says this, and does that. She was absolutely spot on with the things she predicted he'd say and do, and the responses and reactions were designed, as she put it, to give him a taste of his own medicine. Except his was the equivalent to prescribing Vicks while she dosed him with cyanide, metaphorically speaking, obviously, Within 48 hours of her following instructions, and with no prior history of issues, he had gone absent without official leave from work and was finally found in the local hospital where he was on an involuntary hold after emergency services found him attempting to seriously harm himself. Uni friend had never met this man, but she predicted everything he would do correctly and also knew exactly what things would do the most damage to him psychologically in the shortest possible time frame. I often wonder whether she is a psychopath or was just incredibly good at reading people. My ex remotely took over the computers of 7 people using the same Wi-Fi and was able to make it look like the illegal images he was looking at were never on his computer. We lived in a duplex and they let us use their Wi-Fi. It wasn't until years later I realized what he had done. Sometime before this I had come home and walked into our room to find him in the computer of one of the neighbors on his computer. I saw a network map of all the computers in both houses. I confronted him and he gaslit me into believing I had not seen what I thought. Some years later I stumbled upon a GIF on a shared tablet. It was shot in our very distinct bathroom and showed my 14-year-old niece nude. I called police immediately and he never came home again. He is currently in prison. That night he was staying at his parents'. Police were investigating. I realized his Gmail was logged in on another tablet we shared. I could see his search history in real time. When does CP become a federal offense? Can a not convicted sex offender see their kids? What's prison like in Virginia? Daddy going to jail? How do I get my wife to come back to me? Can you plead the fifth at custody court? Etc. I've always found it extremely unnerving that he could be so tech savvy on one side of things and so careless on the other. Oh my God, I remember you. I remember reading about it when you were in the thick of it. Hope you are doing much better now. I am. It's still a struggle and my daughter has a lot of issues because of his rapid exit. It's often really hard and I never expected to be a single parent, but I'm glad I discovered who he was before he targeted our child. Even with her struggles, I look at her and feel extremely privileged that I get to be the one to raise her. He threw all of that away and doesn't even acknowledge that she was affected. At the last protective order renewal he asked for the order to be continued for everyone but her. That's how diluted he is. He believes that he's going to get out of prison and just jump back into being dad. It's bizarre. My daughter is a mini version of my niece and will be 11 when he gets paroled. He met my niece at 10 and victimized her at 14. I already have everything in place to keep him away from her. He's a sex offender for life. I can't believe he thinks he's just going to be given access to any child on release.